It is very wonderful to be back in Madrid, where I lived for several months in the late 1990s while writing part of my novel, The Blind Assassin. And it's a very great honor for me to have received this honoris causa degree from you today at the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, though it is always a little puzzling for a novelist and poet to be honored by a university. In this matter of literature, there are the studiers and the studied, and university professors and critics are the studiers, and novelists and poets are the studied. Should a sea urchin turn up for a celebration put on by those who have described its genetic makeup? It's risky. Some find sea urchins tasty, but also somewhat guilt-making. Perhaps some other, more worthy sea urchin should have been chosen. And the sea urchin, so habituated to expressing itself in the tropes and hieroglyphics of sea urchins, what can it say in defense of sea urchins in general, especially considering the fact that the sea urchins and their doings have always been, are now, and will continue to be under attack in various parts of the world for those who may object to their singularity, their prickliness, and their aversion to lining up in obedient rows. Novel writers and poets are not specialists. They make no definitive contribution to the sum of human knowledge and expertise, not like, for instance, medical researchers or discoverers of new subatomic particles. They spin yarns, they weave verbal fabrics, they make things up, which is why there is a warning label on the covers of their books. Fiction, it says. It says, in essence, don't mistake the contents of this book for reality, although, of course, writers want you to do just that. They are, by definition, licensed practitioners of the art of plausible lying, with an emphasis on plausible. They are suspicious characters, like actors and magicians. They deal in illusions. They are at heart con artists. So it is very kind of you to allow me in amongst you today. But how amazing, when you come to think of it, that there is a Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, that it exists, that people think it worthwhile that such an institution should exist, that young people are educated by it, that older people teach within it, that all this fruitful activity proceeds according to its own timetable, as if it has always proceeded that way and always will proceed, punctuated from time to time by ceremonies and celebrations such as this one. Once upon a time, not so long ago, we might have regarded these occasions as routine, like birthdays and weddings, special in their way, but accepted as part of a normal daily life. When our societies are feeling stable, we can afford to take things for granted. But we are living through an unprecedented time. Indeed, a dangerous time. Dangerous on many different levels and in many ways and in many different countries. And at such moments, it's as if the ground is quivering under us, the political ground. And with that virtual earthquake, the way of viewing the world we'd become accustomed to. We don't entirely grasp what is happening, and therefore we don't feel quite real. Is our orderly, ordinary life, a life that felt solid enough last year and the year before, but has now taken on a fragile, semi-translucent quality like glass or ice? Is it about to dissolve, to melt away, leaving in its place what? A flash flood, a tidal wave, a scene of desolation and waste? The great Spanish writer Cervantes and the great English writer Shakespeare died in the same year and almost on the same day 400 years ago. They were both much concerned with dreams and illusions. Don Quixote battled giants that were, in the ordinary world, merely windmills, but yet he does not seem any the less noble in intention for that. Shakespeare gave us Prospero's speech in The Tempest. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. To question the nature of reality is very human and very old, but each individual and each generation, it seems, must live through that experience anew, and even more intensely when the fabric of what we have known as reality is being so quickly and indeed violently rearranged. The largest challenge facing us right now is climate change, but it is connected with many of the other potential crises that may unfold. When there are prolonged and extreme weather events, droughts and floods, the food supply suffers. Food shortages and famines weaken societies. People become desperate, and the prevailing regime may topple. Anarchy is often replaced quickly by tyranny, a harsh order being seen as preferable to chaos, and people are willing to sacrifice what they used to enjoy as freedom for a rule that promises them at least a little safety. Whether that promise is fulfilled is often an open question, but by the time the freedom for safety trade has been made, it's usually too late to change your mind. Dictatorships of any kind don't relinquish power easily. When times get tough, when resources become scarce, when political orthodoxies are enforced, women in particular don't fare as well as they do in more prosperous eras. Neither do educational institutions. They, and especially the humanities faculties within them, are under increased pressure. The sciences, and especially the applied sciences, do not suffer so much. Governments of all kinds see a use for them, as a rule, but the humanities are concerned with narratives and language and values, and narratives and languages and values, in addition to being absolutely central to the humanity of human beings, are also ambiguously open-ended and shifty, and thus contentious. Who are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? What do we want? Such questions are entwined with the stories we tell, and it seems we can't help but tell stories. We are a storytelling species, and we have been for many tens of thousands of years. I have been especially interested in stories told about women. I have a foot on the ground there, so to speak, and in stories told by women. Even in the olden days, women were noteworthy as tale spinners. Folkloric stories told around the fire were called in England old wives' tales. I guess the old husbands didn't have much to say. Traditional poems for children were attributed to an old woman called Mother Goose, and one need only mention Scheherazade of the 1001 Nights and One Night, an indispensable source not only for story types, but for narrative forms. In the Dark Ages, when I was an undergraduate studying the modern novel, we had two trusted helpers. They were called angle of vision and point of view, and it was probably from them that I took the habit of looking at traditional stories from other angles. Stories about saints who killed dragons look quite different when told from the point of view of the dragon. One of the story forms I looked at in this way was the political dystopia. As a teenager, I had read many of these, but the central characters in them had been male. They were often set in that real estate location open to all comers, the future. From the future, like the afterlife, no voyagers have ever returned to tell us what it is really like, so you are free to create your own version of it. Predictions about the future are often made, but they rest on shaky ground since there are so many factors in play. In the real world, the future is, if you're being honest, quite foggy, though educated guesses backed up by charts and statistics are constantly being offered to us. Still, a wandering asteroid, a mutated disease microbe, or a sudden crash in the stock market, and there go your blueprints for the future. However, there is ample space available in the fictional realm of the future. Once we ran out of undiscovered islands, dystopias, utopias, and fantasy realms of all sorts pulled up stakes and moved into the future. Not wishing to be left behind, I followed suit. In 1984, what a corny year to have begun, I began writing a novel called The Handmaid's Tale. It is set in the future, it is a political dystopia, and it is narrated by a woman. It wasn't called The Handmaid's Tale when I first began it. It was called Offred, which was the given name of its central character. The name is composed of a man's first name and a prefix denoting belonging to, so it is like de in French or von in German, or like the suffix son in English names, Anderson, Williamson. Within this name is concealed another possibility, offered, denoting a religious offering or a victim offered for sacrifice. Why do we never learn the real name of the central character, I was asked recently. I said it was because so many people throughout history have had their names changed or have simply disappeared from view. At some time during the writing, the name changed to The Handmaid's Tale, partly in honor of Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, but also partly in reference to fairy tales and folk tales, because the story told by the central character partakes of the unbelievable, the fantastic. And yet, I put into it nothing that human beings had not actually done at some time in history or in some place. Although what is happening to her seems unreal to the central character, it has all happened before to someone, somewhere. And today, much of it is still happening. I wrote away at this book while living in West Berlin, which was at that time still surrounded by the Berlin Wall. So the wall in the book upon which the bodies of executed political opponents of the regime are hung for display was inspired partly by the Berlin Wall, but also by the wall around the main campus of Harvard University, where the novel is set in the former United States, in a location that was first a 17th century theological seminary during the Puritan theocracy situated there, and then a leading liberal university, but now, in the future of the book, the locus of a politically repressive dictatorship that purports to have gone back to its 17th century fundamentalist roots that have always lain beneath the modern-day America we thought we knew. In The Handmaid's Tale, Gilead has usurped the government of the United States of America in a military coup blamed on Islamists. The Constitution and Congress are no longer. Due to a shrinking population caused by a toxic environment, and by the way, studies in China are now showing a sharp fertility decline in men there, the ability to have viable babies is at a premium. In totalitarianisms, the ruling class monopolizes valuable things, so the elite of the regime are allowed to have extra fertile females assigned to them as handmaids. The biblical precedent is the story of Jacob and his 2 wives, Rachel and Leah, and their 2 handmaids. 1 man, 4 women, 12 sons. But the handmaids could not claim the sons. They belonged to the respective wives. And thus the tale unfolds. Over the years, this novel has been translated into 40 or more languages. It has been a film in 1989. It has been an opera, and it has also been a ballet. Wow, that was strange. It is being turned into a graphic novel as we speak, and it is currently being made into a television series that will launch in April of 2017. When this book was first published, some of its reviewers took the position that it was an overwrought fantasy. Such a regime was impossible to envisage as a reality at any time, ever, in the United States of America, land of the free and home of the brave. I have never taken such a rosy view, either of any country or of humanity in general. Having been born in 1939, the year World War II began, I have never been able to pronounce those comforting words, "It can't happen here." Anything can happen anywhere, given the right conditions or the wrong conditions. No country is exempt. In the wake of the recent American election, fears and anxieties are rampant. Basic civil liberties are being seen as endangered, along with many rights for women won over the past decades. The country appears more ideologically divided than at any time in modern memory, with a president who seems prepared not only to flout the rules of his own country, but to remain steadfastly ignorant of what those rules even are. Of what use at such times is art? In societies in which money is the prime measure of worth, this question is often posed, usually by those who devalue artists, but right now it's being posed by artists themselves. In addition to the faltering of individual artistic confidence, there's a distinct chill in the air. Will self-censorship set in? Back in the Cold War days, many writers and filmmakers and playwrights got a visit from the FBI on suspicion of un-American activities, and Stalin and his strongmen have a reputation for censorship and suppression, or else of demanding fawning tributes. Suck up or shut up has been their rule. Will this cycle repeat itself? In the face of such uncertainties and fears, nervous digital semaphores are flying back and forth among the creative communities of America. Don't give up. Write your book. Make your art, they urge one another. But what to write or make? From a vantage point of 50 years in the future, what will a commentator have to say about the art and writing of this era? The Depression was chronicled by Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath, which described in detail what the Dust Bowl 30s felt like to those living through them at the poorest level. Arthur Miller's play The Crucible provided a fitting metaphor for McCarthyism with its witch hunts and mass accusation. Klaus Mann's novel Mephisto, about the rise of a famous actor, showed absolute power corrupting an artist absolutely during the reign of Hitler. What sorts of novels, poems, films, television series, video games, paintings, music, or graphic novels will adequately reflect the next decade? And what will happen to free speech, that longtime hallmark of American democracy? Will the term become a euphemism for hate speech and internet bullying, a hammer to whack so-called political correctness? If that already noticeable tendency intensifies, will those defending the concept of free speech then be attacked from the left as fascists? In the present climate of truthiness and social media, when news cycles can be kicked off instantly by spurious tale-telling or fake news, it's easy to get such fisticuffs going. But surely we can look to the artists to uphold our better values. Don't they represent the most noble features of the human spirit? Not necessarily. Creative people come in many models. They can be merely paid entertainers or opportunists who hope to make $1 million. Some have more sinister agendas. There's nothing inherently sacred about films and pictures and writers and books as such. Mein Kampf was a book. Plenty of creative people in the past have rolled over for the powerful. They're especially subject to pressure because as isolated individuals, they're very easy to pick off. No armed militia of other artists protects them. No underground mafia of artists will put a horse's head in your bed if you cross them. Those under attack may be defended verbally by other artists, but such defense counts for little if a ruthless establishment is bent on their destruction. The pen is mightier than the sword, only in retrospect. At the time of combat, those with swords generally win. There will, of course, be protest movements, and artists and writers will be urged to join them. It will be their moral duty, they will be informed, to lend their voices. Artists are always being lectured on their moral duty, a fate that dentists generally avoid. But it's tricky telling creative people what to create or demanding that their art serve a high-minded agenda crafted by others. Those among them who follow such hortatory instructions are likely to produce mere propaganda, two-dimensional allegory, or sermonizing. The art galleries of the mediocre are wallpapered with good intentions. What then? Some sort of genuine artistic response might be possible. Maybe social satire. Will someone attempt the equivalent of Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, which suggests that the export and consumption of babies would be an economic solution to Irish poverty? Though satire tends to fall flat when reality exceeds even the wildest exaggerations of imagination. However, the creators of science fiction, fantasy, and speculative fiction have often chosen those forms to register protest in times of political pressure. They have told the truth, but told it slant, as Zemyatin did in his 1924 novel, We, which was already anticipating the Soviet liquidations to come. Some will produce witness art, like those who have echoed great catastrophes, wars, earthquakes, genocides. Surely the journal keepers are already at work, inscribing events and their responses to them, like those who kept accounts of the Black Death until they themselves succumbed to it, or like Anne Frank writing her diary in her attic hiding place. Works of simple witnessing can be intensely powerful, like Nawal al-Saadawi's Memoirs from the Women's Prison, or Jan Lianke's The Four Books, which takes on the famines and mass deaths in China during the Great Leap Forward. Let's hope that if democracy implodes and free public speech is suppressed, someone will record the process as it unfolds. In the short run, perhaps, all we can expect from artists and writers is only what we have always expected. As once solid certitudes crumble, it may be enough simply to cultivate your artistic garden, to do what you can as well as you can do it, to create alternate worlds that offer both temporary escapes and moments of insight, or to open windows on the given world, however flawed, that extend our vision a little. It's the artists and writers that can remind us in times of panic that each one of us is not merely a statistic. Lives may well be deformed by politics, many have been, but finally we are not the sum of our politicians. Let's hope for work that expresses, for this time and place, and as powerfully and as eloquently as possible, what it is to be human. Thank you once more.